Within the Tantric tradition, we don't speak of creation as if it were some distant historical event. Creation, properly speaking, is something that happens every moment in a process called the evolution of consciousness. So, for one thing, you have to understand that this theory is based upon one's own subjective experience of reality. So it's not talking about external or objective reality necessarily, although certainly that seems to be involved from the individual's point of view. But everything is described from the individual perspective. And from the individual perspective, then pure consciousness, which is the substratum of all existence, of our sense of self, the original self, the true self, the higher self, self spelled with a capital S, pure consciousness, has this tendency, propensity to bubble up into different forms, manifest worlds and universes and all kinds of beings. So it morphs itself, sort of like Terminator 3, into all these different forms, and then enjoys itself playing in all these forms. So this evolution of consciousness is thought from the individual framework to occur through different stages. And I'm going to use the body's geography as the reference point for these stages because that's how the new tantrics think of it. So pure consciousness, as it were, starts here at the top of the head in the 1,000-petaled lotus, which is also called the ocean of consciousness or the ocean of nectar. These are all metaphors for this original state, which never goes away, by the way. It doesn't change. It's always there. It's just that our attention gets diverted into its various manifestations, and so we lose that original awareness of our being as pure consciousness. So the first stage in that devolution, which is symbolized by this chakra between the eyes of the Ajna chakra, is the psychological aspect of being the mind. It's called manas, and then manas breaks down into again same term but used slightly differently: manas, ahankara, and buddhi. Now, manas is the mental function that cogitates, that takes data and compares it and understands and makes some kind of sense out of it. So that's manas. Then ahankara is the mental function that says whatever experience is there belongs to this particular center of consciousness as opposed to the universal consciousness. So it's like it separates off our experience, making it our experience. That's ahankara, which is also known as ego. Ahankara literally means the I maker. So it's a mental function that creates the sense of the individual I-ness, of the individual identity. And then buddhi is the understanding function. It's the closest to pure consciousness, which is that function where the various data that the mind is cogitating about comes into focus, as it were, where the equation adds up, where the insight occurs. That's buddhi. Okay, so that's the first evolution of consciousness, is this mental level. And in that level we have dreams, imagination, memory, fantasy. Okay, next step down, thought of as the chakra at the throat, is the evolution, is the manifestation of consciousness as sound. First as the sort of the subtle concept of hearing, along with then the actual creation and perception of what we call physical sound, down to the next chakra, the anahata, the heart level, is the sense of touch and the ability to perceive skin sensations, touch sensations. It's symbolized by the wind element, but for whatever reason, maybe because when the wind blows, you feel it on your skin. These are all metaphors, not to be taken too literally. This the sound chakra here, this Vishuddha chakra, the corresponding element is akasha, which we don't really have a good translation for, space or ether. It's sometimes translated as, but it just means it's a pervading sound, subtle sound, and then actual physical sound. So we have sound, touch, then we go down to the solar plexus. This is the sense of sight, down to the genital area. This is the sense of taste, and then finally at the root of the spine we have the Muladhara chakra, which corresponds to the sense of smell. So that's the geography, the way that consciousness is thought to evolve. First, mental and subtle elements, and then the physical elements of sound, touch, sight, taste, and smell. All right, once consciousness is fully evolved, then we have a physical world. We have the experience of the physical world consisting of these sensations from these various sources, the five senses, the kind of information that they provide, combined with whatever our mind does with all of that. And we all know that different minds filter that information differently. And what's left, then what's produced, is a sense of individual identity, physical, psychophysical identity, which the technical term in Tantra is the Jivatma. So we have this individual being that's created, as it were. The sense of it is created from this evolution of consciousness. And then that's our given situation. What's interesting and important to realize about this individual being, this Jiva, Jivatma, Jiva Shiva, is that the only real self, the only persistent self in this pattern of psychophysical functions is pure consciousness. The rest is just a transient pattern that creates an illusion of, or the appearance of, an individual. And the analogy is a torch spun around quickly enough, at night, creates the illusion of a circle, the visual appearance of a circle. There's no actual circle there. There's only different points of the torch in motion. So also this jiva is a pattern of psychophysical functions that creates the appearance of a self, when actually the only self is the light of awareness, consciousness. Now, spiritual practice reverses that process, where consciousness devolves back into the original consciousness, which in Tantra is called Shivatma. So you have Jivatma or Jiva Shiva, and then you have Parama Shiva, the supreme Shiva in the top of the head. So in a process that we're not going to get into right now because it's very technical, called Buddha Shuddhi, or the purification of elements, those elements are withdrawn back into the original pure consciousness, and then you realize yourself as the infinite.